He took everything from her, then left her with a secret she couldn't hide. Betrayal's echo, the first sign that something was wrong, came when Audrey Williams' card was declined at the grocery store. It was a small embarrassment that quickly snowballed into a nightmare. Standing in the parking lot, she called their bank only to discover that their joint account, which should have held over $30,000, was empty. Marcus must have made a large withdrawal, she told herself, fumbling with her phone to call her husband of 3 years. The call went straight to voicemail, as did the next 12 attempts. By the time Audrey reached their modest suburban home, her confusion had morphed into fear. The house felt different. It took her a moment to realize why. Marcus's presence had been systematically erased. His clothes were gone from the closet. His beloved collection of vintage records no longer lined the bookshelf. Even his toothbrush had disappeared from the bathroom counter. "This can't be happening," Audrey whispered, sinking onto their bed. Her bed now. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach, still flat, but carrying a secret she'd planned to share with Marcus that very evening. A baby. Their baby. Now, just her baby. The irony wasn't lost on her. For 3 years, they'd been trying to conceive. The fertility treatments, the disappointments, the hope that faded a little more each month. And now, when she'd finally gotten pregnant naturally, Marcus was gone. A week passed in a blur of unanswered calls, visits to the police station where she filed a missing persons report, and the gradual realization that Marcus hadn't just disappeared. He'd cleaned them out. The mortgage hadn't been paid in months. Credit card statements revealed cash advances she knew nothing about. Their retirement savings had been liquidated weeks ago. "Mrs. Williams, it appears your husband was planning this for some time," Officer Bennett said gently, reviewing the financial evidence Audrey had gathered. "I'm sorry to say this has all the hallmarks of a deliberate abandonment, not a disappearance. Under suspicious circumstances." That night, unable to sleep, Audrey tore apart their bedroom in a rage she hadn't known herself capable of. She ripped down curtains, upended drawers, and pounded her fists against the walls until her knuckles bled. It was during this breakdown that she discovered it. A loose floorboard beneath the bed, and under it, a small metal key taped to an unmarked business card. The key was old-fashioned, heavy brass with an intricate design on its head. The business card bore only an address written in what she recognized as Marcus's handwriting. "What were you hiding?" she whispered, turning the key over in her palm. For the first time since his disappearance, Audrey felt something other than despair. A spark of determination ignited within her. The following morning, she called in sick to her job at the library, a job that suddenly needed to support not just her, but the child growing inside her. Dressed in clothes that still smelled faintly of Marcus's cologne, she drove to the address on the card, the key burning a hole in her pocket. Whatever Marcus had taken from her, their savings, their future, their trust, he had unknowingly left her with 2 things: a child she would protect at all costs, and a mystery that might lead her to answers. As she pulled up to what appeared to be a storage facility on the outskirts of town, Audrey made herself a promise. She would rebuild from these ashes, and she would uncover every last one of Marcus's secrets, no matter where they led. The hidden legacy. The storage facility was run down, a maze of identical metal doors with peeling paint numbers. Unit 237, corresponding to the key in Audrey's possession, was tucked away in a back corner, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. The lock turned with a reluctant groan. Audrey held her breath as she pulled up the door, wincing at the harsh scrape of metal against concrete. Inside, the unit was surprisingly organized. Plastic bins stacked neatly against one wall, a filing cabinet, and a small desk with a laptop. "Who were you, Marcus?" she murmured, pulling on a pair of gloves she'd brought. Whatever this was, she didn't want her fingerprints all over it. The first bin contained photographs, hundreds of them. Not family photos or vacation memories, but surveillance shots of a sprawling estate, close-ups of an older man in expensive suits, and images of what appeared to be industrial waste being dumped into a river. The filing cabinet yielded more disturbing discoveries: financial records showing millions in offshore accounts, environmental impact reports with key sections highlighted, and newspaper clippings about mysterious illnesses in a small town called Millfield. By the time Audrey opened the laptop, she'd pieced together a chilling narrative. The man in the photos was Richard Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries and one of the wealthiest men in the state. The company's chemical plants had apparently been illegally disposing of toxic waste for years, poisoning the groundwater in Millfield. "Mrs. Williams?" Audrey jumped, nearly dropping the laptop. A man stood in the doorway of the unit, his badge glinting in the dim light. "Detective Julian Rivera," he said, showing his credentials. "I've been looking for your husband for quite some time." "That makes two of us," Audrey replied, her hand protectively covering her stomach. "How did you find me?" "I've had this place under surveillance for weeks. Marcus Williams isn't who you think he is." Rivera explained that Marcus had been gathering evidence against Blackwood Industries for over a year, but recently something had changed. Large sums had been transferred to his accounts, suggesting he'd gone from whistleblower to blackmailer. "He was supposed to bring everything to me," Rivera said, glancing at the bins. "Instead, he took the money and disappeared." Audrey felt the world shift beneath her feet. "And what about me? Was I just part of his cover?" Rivera's expression softened. "That's something only Marcus can answer." As they sorted through the evidence together, Audrey found one more item that caught her attention: a photograph of a young woman who shared Richard Blackwood's eyes. The back bore a single word: Vanessa. "His daughter," Rivera confirmed. "Estranged from the family for years. Rumor has it she knows where all the Blackwood skeletons are buried." Audrey pocketed the photo, a plan already forming. "Then she's exactly who I need to talk to." Dangerous alliances. 6 months had passed, and Audrey could no longer hide her pregnancy. Her rounded belly preceded her as she walked into the trendy downtown cafe where Vanessa Blackwood had finally agreed to meet. Finding the Blackwood heiress had taken weeks of careful research and a string of politely rejected meeting requests. What finally worked was sending a copy of one particularly damning photo from Marcus's collection, one showing Richard Blackwood shaking hands with a known criminal outside his factory. Vanessa sat at a corner table, elegant in simple black clothing that couldn't quite disguise her family resemblance. She watched Audrey approach, her eyes widening slightly at the pregnancy. "I didn't know Marcus had a child on the way," she said, gesturing for Audrey to sit. "Neither did he," Audrey replied. "Now I need to know what he was involved in." Over the next hour, Vanessa filled in the gaps. She had been the one to initially contact Marcus, hiring him to gather evidence of her father's environmental crimes. Her motivation was simple: revenge for being disinherited after she tried to reform the company from within. "My father destroyed an entire community for profit," Vanessa explained. "The cancer rates in Millfield are 6 times the national average. I wanted justice, not money." "But Marcus wanted the money," Audrey said quietly. Vanessa nodded. "He approached my father with the evidence, demanding payment for his silence. I never heard from him again." Meanwhile, Detective Rivera had been building a case against Blackwood Industries, but key evidence kept disappearing. Witnesses changed their testimonies, and judges recused themselves from related cases. "Your husband wasn't the first person Richard Blackwood has made disappear," Rivera warned Audrey during their weekly check-ins. "These people have resources and connections we can only imagine." Despite the danger, Audrey continued working with both Vanessa and Rivera, carefully navigating their competing agendas. She provided copies of Marcus's evidence to Rivera while using Vanessa's insider knowledge to uncover more. "You should walk away from this," Vanessa told her one evening as they reviewed documents in Audrey's living room. "My father isn't above hurting a pregnant woman if she threatens him." "I can't walk away," Audrey replied, one hand resting on her active baby. "Your father's company poisoned an entire town. My husband betrayed everyone involved. I need to make this right." What Audrey didn't share was her growing suspicion that Vanessa knew more about Marcus's disappearance than she admitted. Small inconsistencies in her story, a certain tension whenever his name was mentioned, something wasn't adding up. That night, after Vanessa left, Audrey received an anonymous text. "Blackwood knows you have the evidence. Get out now." Minutes later, she noticed a car parked across the street, its engine running. The confrontation. The Blackwood estate loomed against the evening sky, its manicured grounds and security gates designed to keep people like Audrey out. Yet here she stood in Richard Blackwood's wood-paneled study, 8 months pregnant and clutching a file that could destroy him. Getting inside had been Vanessa's doing. "One last chance to offer my father redemption," she'd said, though her tight smile suggested she expected none. Richard Blackwood was tall and imposing, with silver hair and cold eyes that assessed Audrey like she was an insect that had crawled into his pristine home. "So you're Marcus's wife," he said, not offering her a seat. "Vanessa says you have something that belongs to me." "Evidence," Audrey replied, remaining standing despite her fatigue. "Of illegal waste dumping, bribery of officials, and the resulting health crisis in Millfield." "Allegations," he corrected smoothly, without proof. Audrey opened the file, spreading photographs across his desk. "Time-stamped images of your trucks dumping waste at midnight. Chemical analysis of soil samples. Medical records showing the cluster of rare cancers. Bank transfers to local officials, who looked the other way." Blackwood's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his glass of whiskey. "The same evidence your husband tried to sell back to me." "He was wrong to blackmail you," Audrey acknowledged. "But you were wrong first." The confrontation escalated, with Blackwood alternating between dismissing the evidence and threatening legal action. When those tactics failed, he offered money, far more than Marcus had demanded. "I don't want your money," Audrey said. "I want you to clean up Millfield, fund medical care for everyone affected." "Admit what you did," Blackwood laughed. "You're even more naive than your husband." "Where is he?" Audrey asked suddenly. "What did you do to him?" Before Blackwood could answer, Vanessa stepped forward from the shadows of the room. "He's alive," she said quietly. Audrey turned to her in shock. "You know where he is?" "I've always known," Vanessa admitted. "He came to me after taking my father's money. He was scared, said Richard had threatened to have him killed if he ever came forward." The revelation hit Audrey like a physical blow. All these months, Vanessa had known. "You used me," Audrey whispered. "Both of you used me. I needed someone." "My father couldn't buy or threaten," Vanessa replied. "Someone with nothing left to lose but everything to fight for." In that moment, surrounded by enemies and betrayed by allies, Audrey realized she had become exactly what they needed, and perhaps what justice demanded. Someone who would not back down. "This evidence goes public tomorrow," she told Blackwood, "unless you sign the agreement I've brought. Full cleanup, medical fund, public admission." "You'll never leave this house with those documents," Blackwood threatened. Audrey smiled for the first time that evening. "They're already with Detective Rivera, and if I don't call him in exactly," she checked her watch, 12 minutes, he releases everything. Reclamation. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft breathing of the newborn nestled against Audrey's chest. Her daughter, Olivia, was just 2 days old. Tiny fingers curled around her mother's thumb as if holding onto a promise. "She's beautiful," Detective Rivera said from the doorway, a small pink teddy bear in his hands. "Thank you," Audrey smiled, gesturing for him to enter. Any news? Rivera placed the bear on the bedside table. Richard Blackwood held a press conference this morning, announced a $50 million fund for Millfield residents affected by unfortunate contamination incidents. Didn't quite admit guilt, but it's a start. And the criminal charges? The DA is moving forward. With the evidence you provided and 3 whistleblowers who've come forward since the press conference, it's looking solid. Audrey nodded, gazing down at her daughter. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of legal depositions, media attention, and preparing for Olivia's arrival. The agreement she'd forced Blackwood to sign that night had been just the beginning. "What about Marcus?" she asked quietly. Rivera's expression hardened. "We found him in Canada, living quite comfortably on Blackwood's money. He's being extradited to face charges of extortion and fraud. The news should have hurt more," Audrey thought. Instead, she felt only a dull ache where love had once been. And Vanessa? Cooperating with authorities in exchange for immunity. She's testifying against her father. After Rivera left, Audrey received one more visitor, her former mother-in-law, Eleanor, who had reached out after seeing Audrey on the news. "I always knew something wasn't right with Marcus's stories," Eleanor said, gently rocking her granddaughter. "Too many contradictions, too many secrets. You deserved better, dear." "We both did," Audrey replied, watching the older woman with her child. Despite everything, she wouldn't deny Olivia a grandmother who clearly wanted to be part of her life. 6. Months later, Audrey stood at the edge of the Millfield Community Park, watching as construction crews broke ground on a new medical center, funded by Blackwood Industries as part of the settlement. She no longer lived in the house she had shared with Marcus. That part of her life was packed away, much like the evidence she had gathered in those frantic months of investigation. Her new apartment was smaller but filled with light and the laughter of her growing daughter. The notification on her phone reminded her of Marcus's sentencing hearing scheduled for the following week. She would attend, not out of bitterness or a desire for revenge, but for closure. "Ms. Williams?" A woman approached, introducing herself as a former Millfield resident. "I just wanted to thank you. My sister died from cancer 2 years ago. The medical fund is paying for my nephew's college now." As Audrey drove home that evening, Olivia sleeping peacefully in her car seat, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. Marcus had taken everything from her, then left. Her with a secret she couldn't hide, her pregnancy. But that secret had become her strength, her reason for fighting, for uncovering the truth, for rebuilding. In the end, Marcus hadn't taken everything. He'd unwittingly given her the most precious gift, not just Olivia, but the discovery of her own resilience. She had reclaimed her life from the wreckage of betrayal and created something new, something that was entirely her own.